I'm Catherine Arndt, the Chief of the VLGA Connect Studio. Welcome to today's episode, brought to you by the VLGA, your councillor support network and the national broadcaster on all things local government.
Hello everyone, welcome back to VLGA Connect. It's time for another in our popular Local Leaders series, where we've been speaking during this year to CEOs and mayors from member councils across the VLGA, and we're casting that just a little bit wider now. And we thought, why not talk to the president of the VLGA, who is of course a councillor as well and a former mayor and deputy mayor. It's Councillor Denise Massoud. Welcome to the program.
Morning, Chris, and thanks for giving me this opportunity.
Lovely to have you here. Of course, you're at Whitehorse City Council, and I'm always amazed by some of the metropolitan parts of Melbourne and some of the features that they have. And in the background there is a very bucolic, rural, pastoral sort of setting. What's that in your background picture?
Well, that's actually Blackburn Lake, which I think is the jewel in Whitehorse, and it is in my ward. And before getting onto council, I was on the committee and a volunteer there. And it was one of the things that I think I had a great passion for. My son's now mid-30s, and we went there for his first birthday party. So that's Wow. How long it had an importance for me.
Excellent. Well, it looks lovely. Nice choice for the backdrop there, Denise. So you've been on Whitehorse Council since 2012, I think. So by my math, that means you're in your third term as a councillor?
Yeah, third term, 11th year. And last night I was very honoured at the MAV conference dinner to get finally get the 10-year award, and which was lovely. A lot of people there, and great to see that there are quite a lot of councillors that hang in there and really care about their communities. So it's a nice reflection on local government, where some people really sort of persevere and really keep working hard for their communities.
Yes. So tell us about the decision path that you went down to run for council. What was the motivating factor for you back in 2012, or was it earlier than that?
Well, I think it evolved over time as a resident in what is now Whitehorse Council since the mid-80s. And like a usual resident on the kinder committee, primary school committee, I was secretary and teams coordinator for the basketball club. As I've indicated, I was passionate about the trees and the beauty that we have in Whitehorse, and you can see there Blackburn Lake. And I just think it's, as I said, a jewel, because it's like being out in the Australian bush, and yet you're in the heart of the suburbs. And I just think, how lucky am I to live in an area where I've got those beautiful spaces, and I can enjoy them. And sometimes I can sit in my own backyard and see the birds and everything else. So I love the environment, but there's a lot more to being a councillor. But there was I guess in the early 90s, there was my first home. I was lucky enough to look across on the other side, and it was paddocks with horses. It was an old pony club, and it was designated Hillsville Freeway land. And of course, when the Hillsville Freeway got canned, the land was up for sale, and I remember the council was able to buy it for $2 million, but didn't. About 4 years along the track, it was then the price tag was $11 million, and of course they couldn't afford it. And I was very frustrated at the loss of that opportunity for the community. It subsequently got sold and was used for social housing, and I have to say that on my journey and becoming more aware of the needs of the community, that was not a bad outcome. And we know how much pressure we have for housing now. So, you learn as you go along. But I'd always been passionate about things within the community. And once my children were old enough, I then decided I'd put my hand up, and that's when I did. And I should say, I tried in 2008 and I didn't get elected. But I came back again in 2012 and I did get elected, and I've enjoyed 11 years of working for the community.
That's sort of what I was alluding to, because many people do try once, twice, sometimes more before they eventually get elected. Some of our guests have been lucky enough to get elected first time around. So what do you think is the secret to running a good campaign with a high chance of being elected locally?
Well, I got very close the first time, but it was just the way preferences. There were more people perhaps standing.
Yeah.
The next time I stood, the preferences that I got that flowed to me got me into the second position. And since then, once I got in and you're working for your community and you're recognised for what you're doing for them, it's been helpful that I've been able to get over the line virtually without the need really for preferences as such. And I think that also tends to give you a sense of, well, I'm doing something that obviously they do value, and it inspires you more, because I think as you see the impacts that you can deliver to the community, that you suddenly are starting to look at even more things that you can achieve for them, and it's very, very rewarding.
So that incumbency is powerful, isn't it? As you get that profile and people recognise you. Do you think that's a double-edged sword? Do you think some councillors get addicted to that and perhaps don't recognise when it's time to move aside for someone else to come through?
I think it could be. I mean, I'm not sure how long some people have certainly done 4 terms that I know, or 5 terms in metro councils, but I think that's probably less common. I think in the rural councils, there seem to be some councillors that have been there for quite extended periods, but I do think it's not about how long, it's about how active are you delivering for the community? And I would always hope that electors actually have a really genuine look at who is standing and make sure they get somebody that does represent them, because we shouldn't be ageist. We should encourage all age demographics, and no matter what or how long they've been there, if they're really active and they're doing what the community wants, then that's fine. But I do think if you're thinking of retiring, that you should keep an eye out to make sure that there's some, we can't succession plan, but you can certainly encourage others in the community who may have an interest to say, why don't you consider, becoming more familiar with what happens? Because we really need to get people who have that genuine focus on community and want to learn and understand the truth of how it impacts you, because it does have an impact on your life, and how you plan your week is quite different to the normal person with their, full-time job and then just going home to family. It's quite a different dynamic, but it is very rewarding.
Yet many do juggle full-time work and other interests outside as well as a council role, don't they? Which makes for a pretty full schedule.
It certainly does.
Yeah. And in addition to your councillor responsibilities there in Whitehorse, you've taken on the president role at the VLGA. You've had that for a couple of years now. Yeah. What motivated you to make that move to be involved in the more strategic side of the sector, if you like?
Well, I think I just mentioned how you were trying to encourage good people and also good behaviours. And of course, VLGA is very focused on governance, but also does a lot of other good advocacy, which I think is important. And once you get into the sector of local government and you recognise the value, there are many people who actually really love it as a sector. And I certainly will always have a strong interest in local government, even, when I get to the point that I decide to retire. But it's just something that almost, you get taken in by it and you think, I want to do more. There've been some concerning trends in some behaviours and things, and I feel a bit frustrated when I hear some of the cases, and I think, it doesn't reflect across the whole of the local government sector. People need to understand they are isolated, but they do need to be dealt with. And I hope that we can strengthen the sector and the perception of the sector, which sometimes the media don't really help us positively. And yet, really, if they did some stories about what are the great things that local government have achieved, they would have endless opportunities for interviews and for sharing that information. And of course, they choose to go down the negative path, and so they have one or two, big stories, etc. But I hope the community recognise how much is achieved by local government, and the commitment of VLGA to work with councils to have them functioning well and achieving their outcomes for the community, I think is really important. So that was my interest.
So under your leadership, the VLGA has developed a new strategic plan, which looks at some of those issues, but some other things as well. How do you see this next few years shaping up for the VLGA's leadership in the sector?
I think we have a huge opportunity. We work with some great councils. We identify the high-performing councils and councillors, and I think encourage and empower them to really continue to achieve those high levels of good governance, and also they become exemplary to the rest of the sector. I think they're noted, and in getting them to that position, we offer the training and support to councillors, and particularly when you're new to the sector, learning what is the role of a councillor and what's the reality, and etc. Hopefully they find that out, some of them as candidates. But sometimes people are elected and they don't actually necessarily have quite a realistic view of what the pressures might be, and they sometimes need the support. They might need the mentoring from another councillor who's perhaps been there for at least one term. And so that support of new councillors is really important, and building the awareness for candidates who want to stand. But the other thing is the advocacy that we do, and that goes across many facets, if you like, of local government. And I think the connections with, for example, local government Victoria and the minister, etc., trying to get good outcomes for the sector and advocating strongly is a really important function for the VLGA, without going into individual topics, which, can be from the gambling, it could be planning, it could be remuneration, it could be anything. It's very broad.
It certainly is, and all that information is there for people to read on the VLGA website, of course, and that ambitious strategic plan that we mentioned, which takes the work out to 2027. Let's talk a bit more locally before we wrap up, Denise. As we said, you're in your third term. Have you thought about where your local government career perhaps comes to an end at some point? I'm not suggesting it's time for you to pull up stumps, but we are coming into an election cycle. What's the future looking like for you in terms of your representative career?
I'm very keen to probably continue, but I am also very interested. So not just thinking from me, but remembering a council is a group of 11 councillors, and there certainly I'm aware of at least one that has suggested they will retire. And I think it's really important that we are always encouraging community members who have an interest to stand and to be informed. And there is one of our residents that twice I've chatted to them, and they've said, oh, no, not this time. And then the last election, not this time. But now they're ready to have a conversation. And I will not shy away from encouraging people to stand. They may stand against me, and they might do that, and it could be experience for them, and it might shake me up and I might lose. But regardless of those outcomes, that's all right, because it's not really about me, it's about the community. I'm lucky that in my third term I can already reflect on things I've achieved and will be still there. If I'm still alive in another 30 years or whatever, I'll still be able to go back and say, oh, I achieved that and that was a really good outcome. So yeah, you've got to look at it, but it's really important not to reflect just on yourself, but to remember you want to see good people, good representation coming forward.
What are your thoughts on how we better prepare people for the role? Because often the expectations don't match the reality, do they?
No. Well, the expectation for me, I laugh when I think back to one existing councillor at the time who said to me, oh, it's just one Monday night a month, which is, and at that stage was true. There was one ordinary council meeting each month. That was one Monday night, but then there was briefings and then there was strategic meetings. So
not to mention all the reading you need to do.
Oh, well, don't worry, I'm getting to that. So
okay.
What I would say now is we now have 2 ordinary council meetings a month. So there's 4 Monday nights, and that's just for council meetings. Then there are other evenings. And I added up, I've got 5 committees plus 2 committees that all councillors are on, but I've got 5 committees I'm on for Whitehorse Council that I chair, etc., or am one of 2 councillors on that committee with the community. There's always reading for that. But the council meetings with attachments that you have to read could be hundreds of pages. And you do get briefing from officers, but you do need to make the time. And I reflected before that the way that you approach it, it changes your life. It does have impact on your life, because we get the agendas and things on a Wednesday and we've got to do our reading. So it's clearly, when you've got that much reading, it often moves into your weekends. And on weekends, you've got community events and you have to juggle things. So this week, I think I've been home one night. I was home Tuesday night for dinner. I'll be home Saturday night, but otherwise it's been all local government things in the evenings. Sundays a juggle, because we happen to have a friend with getting 3 children christened. So I raced to the church at 10, raced back to Spring Festival at council by 11:50 to get on stage. Then I raced back to the lunch for the christening, and then I raced back to do my session on the booth as a councillor. So, you're running all the time, sometimes on weekends. But again, I'll be there at Spring Festival. The community will be there. I'll see lots of people I already know in the community. It's great to see what the community groups are doing, because there's a lot of booths, etc. And so there's a lot of enjoyment to see the community so engaged, and very rewarding.
You clearly love it, and as you say, it's very rewarding. I wonder, though, are you concerned, as you describe that, you're being honest about what's involved in the role, does it scare people away, but at the same time you want them to understand what they're getting in for, don't you?
I would say I probably do a little bit more. I've got more committees than some other councillors. Some councillors only nominate for one committee. I was working full-time when I got onto council. I couldn't have done as much as I'm doing now. I'm not working now, not working full-time now, and so I've more time. So I don't mind doing the extra, and I take on the committees that are ones that are particularly weekdays during the day, and because not all councillors can do those committees. So you sort of move around, do different committees and work out what suits you. And if you do need to, be careful of your time commitment. None of it's really mandatory that you have to do, but you will get enjoyment by that networking with the community groups and seeing what they're achieving. And I mean, you don't even talk about the emails and the meetings with officers, to try and resolve a parking, perhaps parking restrictions in certain areas because they need to change to support business development and growth, all of those things. So there's a lot of different bits, but the other thing you do is you learn. All the time you are learning. When I got onto council, I've learned so much about waste management. Don't get me started on talking about that. You know, you're looking at what's happening. And actually, I will say one of the very valuable things from VLGA are the panels where we've had discussions on housing, we've had discussions on planning, etc. They are so interesting and so informative, and they really help to better inform councillors when they've got to come and try and consider decisions in their own councils. So you can do more if you've got time. If you've got less time, you have to be selective.
Clearly, when it comes to an end for you, you're going to miss it, whether it's because you choose to stand aside or you don't make it to the other side of an election campaign successfully. What will you do with your time if you weren't on council?
Oh, Chris, I'll never stop. But I have to say, I keep looking at U3A and I go, I want to go and do some of their courses there. When I was a young'un, I'll say now, when I was at university, I used to do silversmithing.
Right.
And we have a lapidary club in a community facility nearby. And I can't wait to get back and start making jewellery again. I desperately want to get back to doing some mosaic things. And I've even thought I might go and learn a language, you know, but I will be back in volunteering as well. Yeah. You know, I'll be back in on some of the committees and, life won't stop for me. I had a mother who she volunteered until she was 90 and then the insurance wouldn't cover her anymore. And she was really irked that she couldn't still go and do it. And I suspect I've got many years ahead of me. And I won't have slowed down at all.
It sounds like you've got a good plan ready to go there, yep. Denise. Look, it's been lovely to talk to you and find out a bit more about you and what makes you tick in your role as a councillor at Whitehorse, as we said, in your third term, and as the VLGA as the president of the VLGA. I think it's 2 years at this point you've been in that role?
It is. I've just been re-elected back in August. And I will add one other passionate thing that I do is I'm actually a vice president Metro for the Australian Local Government Women's Association, and I very much want to continue supporting women coming into local government, just because sometimes it's hard for them to necessarily manage family commitments and everything else. So they do need a bit of support and some mentoring, etc. So I like the work that they do as well.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on all of that and your extraordinary achievements to date in public life. We've got some VLGA events that I'll be pleased to work with you on coming up in Fast Track in November, as well as more of those panels that you mentioned. So there's lots more to do. So look forward to seeing you at those opportunities, Denise.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. And yes, I'm certainly looking forward to all of those future opportunities. It will never stop. You can't retire.
Oh, thank you for letting me know that, and all the best to you as well. I don't think you can retire either, Denise. Lovely to have you on Local Leaders. That's Councillor Denise Massoud from Whitehorse City Council and the president of the VLGA, spending some time with us today. And thank you for watching and listening as you do all the time on VLGA Connect. We'll be back with you with more very soon.